We are just outside the top 10 of Warchant's top 40. That's right, the OG list ranking Florida State football's roster in 2024. This is numbers 11 through 15 on our list. As a quick refresher before I introduce the panel for today's show, or today's video, I should say, here's 16 through 20. This is where we're coming from. 4 offensive players in the last quintet of the Warchant top 40. Roydell Williams, Hakeem Williams, Ja'Kai Douglas, Sione Lolohea, and Kyle Morlock. So now we turn to the new list. And joining me today, managing editor of Warchant.com, Ira Schoffel, staff writer, both team and recruiting, Matt LaSerre, and my name is Tom Lang. Today's top 15, our rankings 11 through 15. You see them there. We're going to start at 15 and get down to 11. It starts with DJ Lundy, starting linebacker. He went to Colorado for about 10 minutes, came back to Florida State at number 15. 14, Earl Little, transfer from Alabama, figures to be starting in the slot. We'll talk about him in just a moment as well. Jaylin Lucas, another transfer from Indiana. Fentrell Cypress, last year he transferred to Florida State, comes back at corner. And then Lawrance Toafili at number 11. We'll start at 15th with Ira, who had DJ Lundy darn near in his top 10. He had him in the highest place among the Warchant staff at number 11. Ira, why does DJ Lundy deserve to be just knocking on the door of the top 10 for this roster?
Well, I think a couple of reasons. I think when you just look at the way he played last year, if you talk to Florida State's coaches, they felt like there wasn't a big drop-off from Tatum Bethune and Kalen DeLoach to DJ Lundy. And a lot of times he would play with one or the other. It was like kind of 3-man rotation, and sometimes he was out there with all of them. And I just think he's a really solid linebacker. He had over 50 tackles last year. I think some people perceive him a little bit lower than he is because they think back to what he looked like his first couple of years on campus when he wasn't ready, he wasn't in shape, he wasn't the guy he is now. And I think that combined with the fact of where they would be if he hadn't come back, as you said, when he went in the transfer portal in December, I mean, that was a shock. And that was it could have been a huge blow for this defense, considering how little production they had returning at linebacker. Him coming back, I think, solidifies that position. Plus, he's a good, solid linebacker. So I think he merits being close to that top 10.
Yeah, Matt, amongst the staff members here at Warchant, the top 3, the people who believe the most in DJ Lundy are the 3 on the screen. You had him at 14th.
Right here, this group.
Ira believes the most, and then the doubting Thomas, wearing my name for a day, is Aslan. He had him at 22. But still, obviously, that's, that top line, top 22, if you think about the starters and the 2 deep. To you, Matt, I mean, DJ Lundy, if you're looking at Pro Football Focus grades, which don't tell you the world, but he was one of the highest rated in stopping the run last year at the position of linebacker. Your thoughts on DJ Lundy maybe expanding that role and being a little bit more this year than a specialist or somebody that comes on a 3 linebacker set? Where do you think he can go this season?
I mean, yeah, he really has to do it all because, I mean, he's really – I know he really wasn't a starter last season, but I kind of consider him a returning starter just because of how much he did play. Again, as Ira said, they considered him the 3rd man in that 3 rotation, and he was out there a good amount between the other linebackers. And also when you just get to leadership, right? That's that one returning guy who's played a lot. And you're expecting Justin Cryer and Blake Nicholson to have bigger roles this year. Having a guy like that on the field with them is huge just to kind of lead the way.
Yeah, agreed. Next on the list for Florida State is we now get into the top 14. That's not really a distinction unless you're working for like ESPN creating graphics to fit Florida in back in the day. We all remember that. Slot corner Earl Little, defensive back technically, but we all kind of figure that this is going to be a player who steps into that role for the departed Greedy Vance, but most notably Jerrion Jones by the end of the season in 2023 was dominant, defending in the slot, getting downhill, making explosive plays. This is kind of, guys, a sight unseen thing with Earl Little. He was here in spring. He went through a full camp with Florida State, but he had a non-contact jersey on. Ira, are we just banking on the Alabama thing here, or is what you saw in spring camp enough to have Earl Little in top 15 and you don't worry about it too much?
I think it's a combination of what we saw in the spring and then also what he did in high school. I'm more interested based on what he did in high school than I am necessarily the fact that he originally signed at Alabama. Florida State desperately wanted him coming out of high school, and he was a very good player, played for Patrick Surtain. So I don't think he's worried about what he's going to be as a player when you take that non-contact jersey off. I think he looks physically outstanding, and I think he's got a great opportunity. Kevin Noles also returns to that position. They've got some other guys that will work there as well. But I think that spot is tailor-made. I thought it would have been a great battle between him and Greedy Vance. But once Greedy Vance left, man, I think it's Earl Little, and I think he's got a chance to be an all ACC type player.
Matt, what did you see from Earl in his one camp so far at Florida State? What stood out to you when you observed practice in the spring?
Yeah, I mean, even in the non-contact jerseys, he made a lot of good plays. Like a lot of even though he would be there in and out, but you look and he'd come in and make that one wow play that kind of got written down in the observations and the ones that we told everyone about. He had a lot of those. And as Ira said, I think the familiarity with Florida State and Pat Surtain being his direct coach now again back from high school, that's huge, right? And you also have Marvin Jones at defensive end, who was his teammate in high school. You have a bunch of American Heritage kids on this team now. So I guess maybe that more like home feeling, change of scenery, I think it's going to be really good for him. And when Greedy Vance left, that made sure he was the guy, right? It kind of, we didn't really know Greedy Vance was good. It's the no contact. But once he left, you saw the staff thought of it's Earl Little's the guy here, and I think he's going to be really good.
Ton of splashy transfers coming in on the defensive side of the ball from 2023 to 2024. On the offensive side, you got a few. But one of the guys that's the most exciting comes now at number 13 on our list. And again, that's Jaylen Lucas, who's going to be a Swiss Army knife, both on offense and in special teams. But Jaylen Lucas can flat fly. And we did get to see that. Fans got to see that in the spring showcase. Guys within a couple of practices, you all saw it and were wowed by it. I know when I got down to see a couple of practices, I could see the difference of Jaylen Lucas getting the edge versus maybe some guys who really turned in excellent 40 times for Florida State in years past. It just feels a little bit different with Jaylen Lucas, and that's why, Ira, I believe you asked Mike Norvell a question during spring camp. How are you going to use him? How can you use him? And he just smiled back at you. This is a weapon for Florida State that's extremely intriguing.
Yeah, no, he does have a different gear. There's no question. And he's a football player. I think a lot of times when you see guys that are a little bit smaller and have great speed, you just wonder, are they a football player? Now, I'm not telling you he's going to run anybody over. He is not. If defensive players, linebackers, defensive ends get a hand on him, he's probably going down pretty quickly. But, man, he is lightning in a bottle, and he can do a lot of different things. He can catch the ball. He's not afraid to run. It's not like he's always trying to bust it outside. He will run up the middle. But, man, he is so dangerous in the screen game and I think wheel routes and everything. I mean, he's a guy I think that defenses are going to have to account for. And so I think Matt kind of went crazy with his ranking of him. Yeah. Congratulations. If it pays off, it's a little bit high. But man, it's hard to argue with him because in the spring, he might have been the most impressive offensive skill player. He probably was. Him and Malik Benson were probably your two most impressive skill players in the spring. And, man, he's going to be a big part of what they do.
So of the believers, Gene leads the way. Gene had Jaylen Lucas at number 6 on his list. So I think Gene is predicting several special teams touchdowns and explosive plays from Jaylen to justify that number. Matt, you're the only other member on staff who put him in your top 10. So Jaylen Lucas is sitting at 13 for the staff top 40, largely because of some of the weight you're pulling. Why do you believe that Jaylen Lucas is going to be explosive for Florida State this year and is warranting a top 10 ranking?
So the truth is I wanted to put him higher, but I couldn't because he's not the starting running back. So, it was kind of hard not to put him up in, my top 5. At first, I was like, no, that doesn't work. But, I mean, just the ability, he can get lost behind linemen and you have no clue where he is. It's watching a Chihuahua run and you just see the legs, or a cartoon where it's the dust cloud going up beneath him. And that's with how small he is. It's very easy to do. You could lose track of him, and next thing you know, he's in the end zone. And then not even just at running back, obviously at special teams, we know what he did at Indiana, having multiple touchdowns there. And again, that doesn't even account for just normal play touchdowns. And even when I talked to Norvell in Tampa a month or so, 2 months ago for one of the booster things, Jaylen Lucas came up again. He was the star of the spring, or at least for us media guys, I don't think we had one video or one thing that just didn't talk about him.
Yeah, I got to see a few of the practices, not as many as you guys did, but within one. I mean, I think it was the first red zone drill I saw. It was, well, that's different. And now that we know, watching what Florida State's sent to the NFL the last couple of years, that a Trey Benson runs a 40 time like he does, that we saw that kind of speed on the practice fields. This is different. Jaylen Lucas' speed is different. So now we get into our final 2 of today's 11 through 15 countdown. This is Fentrell Cypress, a player who, Ira, I know we talked about this last fall. He wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. It's just Renardo Green was dominant, and so there was more action for Fentrell. He was a good transfer, a successful transfer from Virginia for Florida State in one season, but it seems like he's taken it up another gear. Everybody who watched skill position work in the spring said Fentrell looks to have improved. Do you agree with that assessment? And what details, if so, do you think are indicators that he could have an even better year this year as one of Florida State's starting 2 cornerbacks?
He definitely did. And the reason it's important to note that he was solid last year is because, look, he was second team All ACC. I think some media outlets or people had him as first team All ACC the year before at Virginia. He had great PFF numbers. He was regarded as one of the top transfer portal acquisitions when Florida State picked him up out of Virginia. And so there was so much excitement. I think people thought they were getting the next Dion or T-Buck. And he was a nice, solid college cornerback. He was dependable. He made most plays. He didn't give up a lot of busts. He did have a few, but he wasn't spectacular. So I think people were a little bit down on him. And then, like you said, Renardo and Jarian and those guys played at such a high level, it kind of put him in the shade. But yeah, no, I thought he had a great spring. I think one thing that I think Patrick Surtain talked about during the spring was you also have to remember Fentrell Cypress went through a lot at Virginia. He was there. It's not football related, but he was there when they had that shooting on the team and 3 of the players were killed. And the trauma of that, I'm sure it affected everybody on that team. And then he goes in the portal, comes to Florida State, and it's a fresh start, but he's got to get comfortable in new surroundings. I just think you have to look at that first year as it was a good, solid year, but he should take a nice big jump now that he's more comfortable. And the fact that he stayed for this year. And I thought we saw that in the spring. I thought in the spring, he started making big plays. He looked like a guy who could be, one of the better cornerbacks in the ACC, which is what FSU thought they were getting 2 years ago.
Well said, Ira. We're going to pivot to our last player here because Matt and I have some bones to pick on each side of the argument here, and that is at number 11, Lawrance Toafili, who no doubt is going to be one of Florida State's top backs. Florida State uses multiple backs at any given time. Roydale Williams is one of the other perceived leaders in the clubhouse in the offseason for reps. But Roydale is a very different player than Lawrance Toafili, who has been more than steady for Florida State in his career. He's been explosive for Florida State. He was the MVP of the ACC championship game, and one of the principal reasons that Florida State was able to go 13-0 last year. We have a little clip about explaining yourself. We'll run that from Matt first.
No rational person would do as you have done. Explain yourself.
All right, Matt, you believe in Lawrance Toafili in a way that is impressive because you've got him in your top 3. He is one of your top 3 players at number 3. Explain yourself. Lawrance Toafili, why is he such a stud for Florida State in 2024?
The first reason that comes to mind is versatility, right? I mean, you can run him normally. You can throw him out screen passes. He can really do it all when it comes to being a running back. And I think that's huge. And again, as I said before with DJ Lundy, a returning guy, Roydale Williams below him or top running back, whichever they end up being. I think it's more of a rotation than a starter in my opinion, but he's different than him and he has the experience. We're talking about the MVP of the ACC championship game. The only guy who scored a touchdown or had explosive plays in that game. And he's just fun to watch. In my opinion, I think that just his versatility and how you can use him and how important the run game will be this year or should be this year if you can't get the passing game going. I know we've had worries about the wide receivers from the spring game, meaning there has to be a lot of emphasis on the run game. He's got to be that guy, and he's got to be one of the most important guys on the field.
I had a really hard time with this one. We'll run the clip for me because I have to explain myself. According to the rankings, I'm considered a non-believer in Lawrance Toafili, but I'm going to explain myself. Let's hit that button.
No rational person would do as you have done. Explain yourself.
Okay. I'm the only guy on staff that has him outside the top 20. I've got Lawrance Toafili at 22. Now, here's the reason why. Ira can shake his head. You can shake your head. It's fine. I understand that they have high designs for Lawrance Toafili's production. That's why they held him out of spring in a lot of regards. They did it in the showcase. We know what we have in Lawrence is what Mike Norvell said in spring camp. So he's going to get touches. For me, if you're going to be doing an impact report, guys, on potential impact, or to me, I define that as if you are unavailable in a given week, how much of an impact does that have on the team? Florida State is absolutely loaded at running back, I believe, this year. And you've got a bunch of players that fill different skill sets. Do they all embody the total package like Lawrance Toafili might this year? You could argue no. You could argue that Lawrence is best fit for several roles for Florida State, including at slot receiver if they need him in a pinch. But when you got Roydale Williams and Jaylen Lucas as a speedster and Keziah Holmes and Cam Davis in short yardage or Sam Singleton, Florida State's in a good position if Lawrence had to sit in a given week. Ira, is that reasoning good enough, or should I have ranked him better than 22?
That reasoning's decent, but you should have ranked him higher than 22. Yeah, no, you make a good point. And that's kind of the same thing. One of the points I made, I think, talking about some of the offensive linemen that I might have had lower than some people, just because, yeah, man, they're might be solid, but they've got other guards, they've got other players that can play those positions. So how vital are they to this team? And so that's a fair point. I think the thing about LT is, though, he on a team with not a lot of returning experience on the field, especially on offense, the fact that he's played so much, he's been in this system since day one. He knows exactly what Mike Norvell wants. He knows exactly what they're trying to do on every play. I think he needs to be out there a lot, especially in the first half of the season. So if DJ has any questions or any of the other players have any questions, Lawrance Toafili should be a rock for that offense. And I think so he's going to have a huge impact beyond just what his numbers are. But again, I thought Matt probably overshot a little bit, number 3, but 22, buddy. I'm taking Matt's side way more than I'm taking your side.
It's like when I see the disappointed dad from the Florida State stands years ago. I'm sorry, Ira. Now we'll see. We'll do the confessions at the end of the season. Chances are Lawrance Toafili will be the first guy on my list of what we got wrong. The next quintet, the top 10, we are now breaking into the top 10 of the Warchant top 40, includes one player who received 2 first-place votes. That's how deep this roster is this year. Number 6 on our list, who we won't reveal right now, received 2 votes at number 1 overall. Who will that be? Make sure to like this video, subscribe to Warchant TV, because we've got every video counting down the top 40 players all the way up to number 1. So subscribe to the channel. You can find all the other videos. We'll link a couple at the end here, and let us know how we did in the comments section. For Ira, for Matt, I'm Tom. We'll talk to you next time right here on Warchant TV.